6.6. We have to find the values of x for this radical x plus 1 divided by x minus 1, this quantity, to be undefined. We have to find those values that make this undefined. Now we know that a square root is otherwise defined if the quantity inside is 0 or positive. So what this means is, undefined means x plus 1 divided by x minus 1 is negative. We also know that when you have a ratio, the denominator has to be a number which is not 0. If the denominator is 0, then you get an undefined quantity, and square root of that undefined quantity would also be undefined. So we have, so first of all, let's say we find x equals 1, which makes the denominator 0. X minus 1 becomes 0. X becomes 1 will make x plus 1 by x minus 1, that will make it 2 divided by 0, undefined. Now next we look at the number line, and we want to look at somewhere between 0 and 1 or around that, in that neighborhood, to see what other value of x can make this undefined, this ratio, or negative, I should say. So let's say this is the number line, and we have 0 here, and we have 1 here. Now let's pick up some number. Let's say this is 1.2, which is up here. If it is 1.2, what is the value of this ratio? 1.2 plus 1, which becomes 2.2 at the top, and at the bottom it becomes 0.2. So 2.2 and 0.2 is a ratio that you can define, of course. So like that, any other number in this area, or larger and larger numbers, will always have x plus 1 as a positive number and x minus 1 as a non-zero positive number. So anything which is in this domain makes it defined. So let's call this, we don't have to write the full word. Let's say d equal to defined, and nd is not defined. So this part is definitely defined, like we just mentioned. At this particular point, we just showed that that ratio will become 2 over 0, which becomes not defined. And let's see what happens here. Between 0 and 1, we have the upper part, the numerator part, is a positive number still, but the denominator part becomes negative. And once the denominator part becomes negative, the square root of a negative number becomes undefined, which we have stated here. So we are not going to have this ratio or the square root of that ratio defined in this area. So this will also be ND. So let's now check at this point what happens. If x is 0, this is just 1 on the top and minus 1 at the bottom. And we know that 1 over minus 1 is negative. So 2 over a negative number, 1 over a negative number, which becomes negative. So this x plus 1 and x minus 1 up here becomes a negative number, and therefore it is also not defined. So 0 is also to be included as a not defined. Okay. Now what happens when we are here? I have to squeeze in the negative one here. So when it is negative 1, or between 0 and negative 1, let's say I take minus 0.2. Minus 0.2 will make this as 0.8, and then this will become minus 1.2. So 0.8 over minus 1.2 is a negative number, and we know that this ratio under square root, the whole thing will become undefined. So we will continue thinking about that ratio being undefined in this entire region. Not defined. Next, check minus 1. Minus 1 will make this as 0 and this as a negative number. 0 over a negative number is acceptable because the whole thing is 0. So square root of 0 is defined. So that is not a problem. So this now is defined. And you'll wonder what happens beyond minus 1 in this negative direction. Let's take a number minus 1.2. Minus 1.2 and plus 1 becomes minus 0.2, and this becomes minus 2.2. So that becomes a ratio of two negative numbers. That's a positive number, and therefore the thing is defined here. So all these numbers from this point onward is defined. So let me use a pen, two colors, that way we can easily see what is defined and what is not defined. So this part is not defined, including here. This part is also not defined, right up to the edge of minus 1. Minus 1 is not included in the not defined. So all this hashed area is not defined. And now I'm going to use green. These are all defined areas. Including this number. So we can see that by analysis like we did, the given number or the given quantity is not defined for x less than equal to 1 but greater than -1. That includes all these numbers here which are red marked, including +1, including the 0, and all these negative numbers right up to the edge of -1. So those are the defined. So this is your answer.